Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Wheel of Mind, a character point of view reread podcast dedicated to Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time series. This season, we're taking a deep dive into Moiraine's point of view. I'm Lajar Dane of the White Aja.
Hi, and I'm Gisco Samaras, a scholar from Ilion. Now, I want to give everyone a warning. We do use spoilers. We will refer to anything from any of the 15 books tying it into our current episode. So we recommend you read the books before you listen to this podcast. Now, today we're here to discuss chapters 25, 26, and the epilogue of New Spring. So I'll get us started with chapter 25. Chapter 25 begins with Chatean, who is the equivalent of the seneschal of the kingdom there, escorts Moiraine, who's posing as Lady Damodred, to meet with Prince Bryce and his family, along the way thinking of Sioan's behavior with the footman from the night before, studying the architecture, which is typical Moiraine, and seeing Bukama and Ryan outside practicing in a courtyard. Moiraine is bored by the small talk in the meeting, finds almost no information on Lady Inez, and basically bores the royal family with her uninteresting presence and lack of gossip. Moiraine was relieved to meet the children, especially the energetic young Prince Dyrek, who had recently survived a lucky fall and who idolized Lan and referred to him as the King of Malkir. Moiraine thinks that she's not quite ready to see him just yet, so she declares herself indisposed from her travels and announces her plans to stay in her rooms for the next few days. On the way to her rooms, Moiraine comes face to face with Marianne Sedai. Both seem surprised. Marianne claims that Laurel had decided to go south, and a shaken Moiraine begins to ask if Cadsuane was with her. Marianne passes along one of Cadsuane's threats, and the two part ways. But Moiraine thinks on the inconsistencies, and as they would say in Tyr, something smells fishy here. Moiraine suddenly realizes that Black Aja's sisters must have the ability to lie, though she doesn't know how they do it. So she goes to visit Lan instead of going to her apartments, forces her way past his servants into his apartment, and uses his Malkiri honor to gain his promise to have Bukama spy on Marianne. He promises, as long as she answers the question of why the White Tower did nothing to assist Malkir when it fell. She answers with the tower's secret that over 100 sisters traveled to aid Malkir, but that they arrived too late. Since the tower does not announce its failures, they decided to keep that secret, and this information mollified Lan. Moiraine arrives to her room to find Suki, her maid, waiting on Lady Edain's daughter, known as Lady Ezelle. Ezelle wants desperately to join the White Tower, not only to become a Sedai, but also to escape an impending arranged marriage to Lan. Ezelle had been tested years before and found to be able to channel, but she could not go to the tower until she was at least 15 years old. And now she desperately wants to use that to escape her mother and this impending marriage. Ushering her out, Moiraine compares notes with Sioan and realized she had no real useful information on Lady Inez, but planned to do some more gossiping that night after admitting that Cal, the footman, was a good kisser. She was a bit mistrustful of Lan, however. One interesting thing she had found out was that Marianne Sedai had spent the entire day secluded with Lady Inez.
So, one kind of small but amusing part of the chapter to me was how Moiraine was such a bad party guest. Despite all of her court training when she's having to mingle with Prince Bryce and his sisters and Queen Atheniel's sister and all these people, they find her terribly boring. She's not particularly engaged in any of the conversation, and the women seem particularly ready to be rid of her, like not too sad when it's time for her to leave.
Yes.
And I also, at first, when she said she was relieved when Prince Bryce started to introduce her to the children, I'm like, Moiraine doesn't particularly like kids, right? And then she says, oh, but that's a signal that it's time for us to leave and that the party's over.
Yes.
So it's just funny that despite all of her court training, that she was so bad at this. And I guess it just shows how single-minded her focus is. She's got way bigger things to worry about right now.
right. And yeah, that one, it was a pretty good point about that. It seems strange in a way, this dichotomy of she wanted to get into the palace so badly. You see, she and Siwan had cooked up this idea of, she posing as herself basically, but to gain admittance, and Siwan to be her maid in order to be able to find out palace gossip among the other servants. And so they were so focused on getting in there. Yet once she gets in there, she's distracted by land. She's distracted by worry about other things, and it's like once she's there, all of this is a non-issue. She just wants to find out about Lady Ines, and if she's got the dragon reborn, she just wants to find out about the dragon reborn, see if that's who this child is, and either get him out of there or leave and go to the next name on the list. She is so uninterested and uninteresting that she can't even just phone it in and get through this one sitting.
Yeah. I mean, and I sympathize. I've definitely been to social events where I'm similarly having a hard time just getting through the small talk. But this
Yes.
one's got to be especially boring since she doesn't know anybody there, and everyone else is probably like, "Why is this Southern lady showing up?" So I think it's funny that they're sort of commenting about how she's probably weak, especially when the boy talks about Lan and she gets all um, lightheaded and has to leave.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to
I
go to
also,
my room for the next few days. Now,
yeah,
admittedly, if I travel too much, I get a little constipated, but it doesn't
right.
keep me in my room for 2 days. But here, yeah, she gives that excuse, and she hears them whisper something about these Southern women must be weak. And on the way back to the room, the servant that's taking her there has to stop and ask like every 10 minutes, "So do you need some, this or that, warm rags or whatever?"
Oh, I loved her all her little home remedies. that
Yes.
was that was really funny.
I thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah, and I didn't even notice Moiraine noticing the decor, but she absolutely did that. I think when I was
Yes.
writing my summary, I skimmed past some of that, but it
Uh,
is just typical Moiraine, like you said.
yeah. Yeah. And the one thing that did stand out that did not meet her preconceived notions of what this nation would be like is the fact that in all the tapestries and things, none of them were depicting war.
Oh
There were
yeah.
people, flowers, wildlife scenes, and none of it depicting the war and the glorious honor that they've won over the years in battle, even though it was a very warlike nation, but it was one that was forced to by their nearness to the blight.
The only really other point I had about this chapter was Moiraine starting to trust so much more than we've seen her do throughout this book. So the only
Yes.
person she trusts so far is Siwan, and it sounds like throughout her life she hadn't been close to people like that and vulnerable with people in that way until she met
Right.
Siwan. And but now we see her trusting Lan when she has to. I don't know how committed she is to at this point to okay, I'm going to trust him lifelong, and she had hinted at, I think, in this chapter and a little bit in the next one that she's already thinking about the Warder bond. Of course,
Absolutely.
it's not said explicitly for the reader, but I think she has been thinking about it some.
Right.
But she trusts him with information that's supposed to be sealed to the tower that
Right.
people are ordered not to reveal. And she realizes that's the only way she's going to get the help that she desperately needs. So it is for a really utilitarian and kind of pragmatic purpose, which is very Moiraine. I mean, she's all about doing whatever she needs to get to that goal. But I also think she's starting to soften some of those barriers that I talked about in the last episode that they both have. And
I
he's
agree.
having to do that as well, because why would he care about whatever plot that she's doing and try to get, like, he has really no reason and no incentive to get Bukama to spy for her. Like, or is that in next chapter? Am I getting off track?
No, no,
Oh,
it's
yeah, it
this
was.
one.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Okay, so he really doesn't have any incentive of. I mean, getting that information, I suppose, is something pretty valuable to him personally. But um, he could have said that if he wanted to, and then just been like, okay, and just not sent Bukama to do anything. I don't know. I
Right.
think it was great that he's a man of his word here, but I think he's starting to soften up some at the same time that she is, and those barriers they both have, and that intense defensiveness is starting to calm down.
I see a little of that defensiveness of Lan's dropping when she did answer his question because he stated,
Yeah,
I've asked other Aes Sedai and they always change the subject or deflect, and I've never gotten a straight answer. And just the fact that he felt betrayed by them, no wonder he wanted nothing to do with Aes Sedai. No
yeah,
wonder he you know, and it's something I thought is just that natural reticence of people to hesitate from getting close to what they didn't understand because I had forgotten this detail from my
Mhm.
earlier readings of this book, and as I came
Same.
through it tonight, yeah, I was kind of blown away. Like, wow, so they, there was a reason he didn't trust Aes Sedai, and it was a good one. Why didn't they come and help when Malkir was falling to the blight? And to find out that they tried and failed, I believe, uh, I believe that went a long way toward breaking down that barrier.
Yeah.
Um, that of opening up to Moiraine. Now, as far as the internal plots, I don't think he really cared. I think more than anything, well, let me rephrase that. I think as much as anything, he wanted to get her out of his apartments before Lady Edain showed back
Oh,
up again,
yeah, that's
uh,
true.
because he was distracted by her. And another thing that I picked up on with this, it seemed like this chapter was a little bit rushed in one regard.
Mm.
Moraine, if she walks face to face to Marianne Sedai, and she just, I mean, like instantly in her mind, the alarm bells go off. She went very quickly from wanting to trust this former mistress of novices to considering her a potential candidate for the Black Aja.
Yeah.
I mean,
She
very quickly, which
That's
of course she
true.
and Siouan have been on edge. But just because Marianne shows up right there, of course, she was expected to travel there to Chachin.
Mhm.
Um, but to show up a little bit early, to know that the other Aes Sedai are no longer with her. As she stated something about L'Oreal heading south, and that's all I know.
Mhm.
Marianne tells Moraine this, and of course, Moraine considers how badly L'Oreal seemed to want to get north to come to Chachin. So,
Yeah.
something doesn't add up, but she still, to me, makes that leap in logic, and it may just be that right now she doesn't trust anyone.
Mhm.
And she still, of course, is convinced that Cadsuane is Black Aja, and she states
Right.
that to Siouan. But I think I think she went from suspecting everybody to suspecting Marianne very quickly, and
Mm.
perhaps there was no other way to state that. But that part seemed a little rushed to me.
Yeah.
Uh, but then again, I guess to play Forsaken's advocate against myself, Moiraine is a person who, once she thinks she's right, once she has built a theory, she sticks to it until it's completely torn to shreds. She does not change her mind very easily. So perhaps
Yeah.
that's why. Once she came to this conclusion, she stuck to it. And if Marianne had not been Black Aja, if that didn't prove to be true, then it would take a lot to convince Moiraine of that, just as it would take a lot to convince her that Cadsuane is not,
Yeah.
because she she firmly has that in mind. Almost like any sister she really detests is on that list in
Right? Yeah.
her mind.
So she had this, I think all 3 of the Aes Sedai that she met in previous chapters, uh, Laurel and Miriam and Cadsuane, they were all on the fence. She's like, they're either searchers or they're Black Aja. I really can't come up with any other reasons why they would all be heading here. So either they're looking for the same people on the list that I have, or they're following those searchers,
Right.
trying to prevent the Dragon Reborn from being found. So I think she was looking for the tiniest hair of evidence either way, and probably, like you said, maybe more sensitive to getting any Black Aja vibes than getting
Yeah.
any Searcher vibes. So I think she was probably leaning a little closer that direction. Just especially since she first met up with Siwan and realized what kind of danger they're
Right. Right.
in the chapter 18.
And again, with her puzzle solving abilities when it comes to people, having just suddenly come up with the thought that Black Aja can lie, in
Yeah,
spite of the oath rods, in spite of
that seemed really sudden
everything.
too.
Yes, that did seem kind of sudden, but accurate. And maybe that's one of the great things about Moiraine. One of the reasons we like her, and one of the reasons she's such a good character. She's sometimes wrong, but she's most often right, and she has good instincts about people. Maybe it is from growing up with Destim, or maybe it's
Mm.
something she's born with. Maybe it's because she's a woman and y'all just have that way. You always know when something's up or when a guy's trying to hide his latest purchase from you. But
Oh, you sound like a Two Rivers man now, for sure.
uh, But it's as if yeah, she just came to that conclusion. She read it. She knew. She's so intuitive in that regard. And again, this is some of the things I like about Moraine. It could be a character fault, but you don't have to hate every character fault.
Yeah. Oh, it makes them seem so realistic and interesting. Um,
Yes, yes,
Something about that feeling a little sudden, though, does kind of reflect the structure of this whole book to me. There'll be stuff building up, but the pieces aren't quite all there and together. And then one
right.
of the characters will say out loud for us, or not out loud, but I guess in their thoughts, but
They
explicitly
did,
to the
yes.
reader what it is. And you're like, wait, really? Like, oh, I guess so, but do you have enough evidence to know that? I don't know. That's kind of sudden. I've
Right,
noticed that happening a lot, but again, I think it is to illustrate the perceptiveness of these characters. Like Siwan and Moraine both have this kind of puzzle solving ability, just applied to different
right,
contexts.
right. I
Um,
agree.
and I think this book overall, like a lot of the action and the actual events in this book, are not the most memorable or interesting parts of it to me. It's actually just, oh, we got to see Moraine and Siwan when they were young, and we got to see the search start, and we got to see her find land, and uh it's more of just, oh, there's that backstory I always wish that we had, when the plot of Mirion and
Yeah.
everyone else is sort of in the background to me. But yeah.
You're right. You're right. I had not considered it that way, but again, women in your perception, y'all are awesome. So it should not be something we fear so much,
It's
but
an
we
Aes
men
Sedai
do.
trick. Don't ask too many
It,
questions about it.
yes, Lajara Sadai. Thank you.
um if we don't have any more ramblings about this chapter, I think I might move on to my summary of 26. How you
Oh,
feeling about
please
that?
do, because as much as I love this book and much as I enjoy spending time with it, I think it's time to wrap things up.
Yep. So, chapter 26, When to Surrender, opens with Lan's point of view. In short, he gets tripped and pushed with flows of air and falls down a flight of stairs. It seems like that was intentional and meant to kill him, but he was smart to let his all his limbs go limp so that he didn't break any bones resisting the fall. He just got bruised up pretty good. Some servants help him up, and then some more rush in and tell him that Bukama is dying, and he might still be alive by the time he can get there. So Lan rushes out to the courtyard. He finds Bukama, who has a knife in his chest and a surprised look still painted on his glassy eyes and unmoving face. We switch to Moiraine's perspective, and Lan bursts through her door asking about what plots got Bukama killed. What did you get us wrapped up in? He blames her for the push down the stairs because he was insistent that the other Aes Sedai around, Mirion, could not have known where he was. He thought he was a little too sneaky and she was not aware of him. Moiraine doesn't buy that, though. She immediately realizes that her suspicions from last chapter are confirmed. Mirion must be Black Aja, and the royal family is probably at risk. So she asks Lan to take her to wherever Prince Bryce would go to for any kind of private reflection. So Lan takes her to a private walk on the west side of the palace where Mirion indeed is holding Prince Bryce, his son Lord Dyric, and Isel, which is Edain's daughter, prisoner. Ryan also appears to be allied with her. He's there kind of frowning and looking complicit in whatever's going on. So Moiraine's suspicions are confirmed about Ryan as well. Ryan attacks Lan, and Moiraine and Mirion attack each other at the same time. Mirion, however, is much stronger in the power, strong enough to keep the three nobles bound in air and to keep cutting any of Moiraine's weaves that she aims at her. She wears down Moiraine until she can't channel a trickle, and then she starts dropping people off of the railing. So she drops Prince Bryce over to his death and drops his son Dyric off as well, just one by one. Moiraine summons enough physical strength to get up and to stab Mirion in the back to kill her. Unfortunately, at that same time, Isel was already being dangled over the railing in flows of air. Moiraine can't even channel a trickle again to lift her. She catches the girl's hand with her own blood-slick one still from stabbing Mirion, but the girl slips away after a long struggle of trying to hold her. Lan, who is seriously injured and barely survived his own fight with Rhine, pulls Moiraine back from the edge, saying, "Never watch a death you don't have to." Moiraine keeps her physical calm in the way she had during her shawl test, although inside she's barely holding it together. She says she would, or thinks that she would howl with grief if she let go even a little bit of that composure. Lan can only see that Aes Sedai calm from the outside, and he accuses her of being cold. She's only as cold as she has to be, continuing to think of the practical ramifications of what they've done and how it could be seen. She recovered enough channeling ability after some time to heal Lan and to burn Mirion's body as a shocked Lan watches. Mirion is clearly Aes Sedai, but there is no evidence that anybody else would see that she was Black Aja, so Moiraine knows that they would be on the hook for murdering her with no other witness but Lan to testify on her behalf. The thoughts of the royal family and Iselle's last moments keep racing through her mind, but she focuses on the cleanup efforts. They have to get rid of Ryan's body and all this blood as well. Thus ends chapter 26, When to Surrender.
Wow. This chapter is difficult. Difficult to read. I remember the first time through, I was very shocked by it.
Mm-hmm.
And leading up to this, I've been hesitant to get to this final chapter. I don't know what precipitated Mirion to take this step at this time, other than the facts that the Black Aja seem intent on destroying the Dragon Reborn. So she was there, of course, to find out things about Lady Inez and her child. I suppose can only surmise that she discovered the child was not the Dragon Reborn. But it seems that the Black Aja did not know about the timing, or they didn't have all of the details.
Mm-hmm.
So evidently under torture, when Tamara, the former Amyrlin, was being tortured by the Black Aja, trying to get secrets from her, she did not reveal everything. So they knew she was looking for the Dragon Reborn, but there's some details they didn't have that Moiraine and Siwan did have access to. So they were suspecting any man that could channel. And it's talked about how men who could channel had a little bit of extra luck and things, lucky things surrounding them. So I think when Lady Adain was kind of marked off the list, yeah, this is not the one. They then looked to Prince Bryce, to Derek, and even Lan, because they do seem to be unnaturally lucky. The young prince, the boy had fallen down some stairs. They said it was, Lan's own luck that he lived.
Yeah.
Of course, in Lan's case, it was not luck that he lived so much as good training. And for someone to be able to relax into a fall is something you hear a lot. Acrobats talk about it, but stunt people talk about it. But to be able to pull that off is fairly difficult because you're going completely against all of your body's instincts.
Yeah.
So this is describing a man who's taken a lot of falls. But it's as though the Black Aja were focused in on this, so they were just kind of going down the list, not only the list of names that the searchers had, and that Tamara had evidently given up, or some of the other searchers had given up, but that any man who might even potentially be the Dragon Reborn was set to be killed. They even, I think, referenced the blacksmith from a few chapters back. And Moiraine and Siwan, and that may come a little bit in the prologue. I'm sorry if I'm stepping ahead of us there, but they talk about how there's some kind of pattern there that neither one of them really see. And again, we've talked about it before, the whole issue of Ta'veren. I think they're getting into that just a little bit, but they don't know about it yet. There's a hint there, but we the readers pick up on it. But at this time in their life, Moiraine and Siwan don't know about that. They're not able to put the picture together fully, but they know there's some pattern there. And the Black Aja know enough of this same thing, again, to hunt down and try to kill any man that seems very lucky, any man that was on whose child whose name is on the list. They're just covering all of their bases.
Yeah, I guess so. That would explain the death of the Najima man with his sons. I think that was his last name, in the barn fire from several chapters ago. I had suspected that maybe that was their involvement, but I assumed that they were also, I'd forgotten these plot points from these last couple chapters from my first read through. So I was assuming that they were looking for the same list of infants, but I think they are instead just following the searchers. I don't think they actually have the exact same list, but I think they know where the searchers are headed, so they're
Yes.
just glomming onto them
Mm.
and kind of trying to pick the targets the searchers seem to be looking for.
Right.
And so I
Right.
think that Mirion, she was traveling with Laurel, who was one of the searchers,
Yes.
seems to have killed her. We don't know any details of that, but that appears to be what happened. And so she is probably trying to figure out herself, why is Laurel so set on going to Chachin. So when she gets there, she investigates the only suspicious people she can find, which is
Yeah.
Lan with his luck, and the boy Prince Diaric, and that entire family. She could probably get rid of to avoid any questions aimed at herself. I'm guessing if she
Right.
just got rid of the kid, or just
Yeah.
Lan, people might be able to point fingers at her. If she gets
Yeah.
rid of enough people who could have been witnesses or suspicious, she's probably feeling a little safer. So that's my
Yeah.
guess. Although it's very strange to me and kind of implausible that the Black Aja would not know the timing of the birth, just because I know if they didn't get that information out of Tamra, it seems like they probably could have tortured that out of somebody else, or just put it together with the bounty, which seemed kind of a flimsy front anyway. But I think it's a little bit of plot convenience that the Black Aja is ignorant to that part. Which I feel like a few of the threads in this book kind of are, because again, it seems like there's a few bullet points of backstory that RJ wanted to fill us in on, and then had to figure out how to point other parts of the story to really get us there. Like, what's the conflict? I need to build some conflict that they're trying to resolve. Why would she meet in Bond Land in the first place? So I feel like the plot points of this story are not as strong and not as plausible to me, but I don't think that they're bad. I mean, most novels do stuff like this to some degree. Jordan was pretty good at letting his stories kind of wander all over the place in more organic feeling ways in his other books. This one was, I guess, it had to wrap up quickly and easily to be a little novella like it is.
Yeah, I agree. Parts of it are somewhat rushed. I don't know of a way it could have been brought together really better without expanding it out into 4 or 5 novellas.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's stick to the fact we were rooting for Robert Jordan to finish this series himself, and we're kind of sorry that he was not able to. But as much for his sake as for ours, because I think Brandon Sanderson did a masterful job of finishing the series.
Yeah.
But for his sake, I wish Robert Jordan could have finished this, and I didn't want anything else, any other prequels to distract from that. But
Yeah.
at the same time, uh, I I believe in looking back on it when we covered the chapter, when they were in Canloon at the beginning, when
Hmm.
Moraine was meeting with the widow of the man who he and his sons had all died. And you said at the time you thought that could have been the work of the Black Aja. I didn't even consider that. I was looking completely at the possibility of Taverin.
Hmm.
But the clues we have in this chapter, I believe, point to that. Yes, the Black Aja. Um, Probably they have gotten parts of this list and gotten it from from torturing some of the searchers and killing some of the searchers, finding their list written down, whatever the case may be. But at the same time, they've probably had a plot in motion to stop the Dragon Reborn long before now.
Yeah.
They would. It's kind of one of the whole purposes of the Black Aja is
Hmm.
to stop the Dragon Reborn and be able to usher in this next coming of this great Dark One. So yeah, I think they're probably they know some things Moraine doesn't. So even though they have this list in their minds, they're going to say, okay, what if these other Sedai are wrong? What if this list is not just containing the names of the Dragon Reborn? Because we understand that it really didn't have the name of the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah.
It had a lot of likely candidates, but it didn't have the one. So yeah, I think in their minds they weren't going to take that chance that this is it, this is final. Yeah, we're going with this list the
Mm.
way the Amerlin, first Amerlin, Tamra Spenya, wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because they had some other information. So yeah, they weren't really working at cross purposes so much as they were going to cover every base they could.
That's a
Now,
good point.
as far as why she killed Dyrek and them in this way at this point in time, seems to me she could have found something a little more quiet to do with it.
Hmm.
And at first, I thought she was going to try to kind of corrupt Azael, into going to the
Yes.
tower and becoming part of the Black Aja.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't know. Perhaps the battle with Moraine was a little more tiring than it appeared, and she just had to go ahead and cut things off.
Mm.
Perhaps she just decided, since Moraine burst out there, she would have to kill the prince and the young one, and you'll be done with those two. And that's the reason I said earlier that I dreaded this chapter so much,
Mm-hmm.
because to just imagine to any degree the father standing there and watching his young son be dropped off this
Mm.
tall walkway under the roots below. And even talks about how he never uttered a sound. When it was his turn, she picked him up with flows of air. He never utters a sound. He doesn't struggle. He's just glaring hatred at her. He
Yeah.
he he was ready to die at that point, just because he'd lost his son in such a horrific fashion. And I don't think it really bothered him that he was about to die. He wasn't fighting
Mm.
that. He was hating on her because that's all he had left that he could do. And
Yeah.
so he was doing that with every ounce of energy he had. And just to imagine that kind of pain, the father going through, I dreaded getting to this chapter again, because the human suffering is, it's always hard to bear. And there are a lot of innocent people that die in the real world. There's a lot of innocent people that die in throughout the Wheel of Time, in the series. But something about this one is just so cold blooded, so unnecessary, that it was just hard to stomach.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it's in there. It shows what they're up against. This is not a group of people who just want to, you know, get the magical artifact and defeat the bad guy. They're really building up how bad the bad guy is. How terrible things would be with this Dark One if his followers are willing to just casually do things like this. And this is by far not the worst they've done.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think he did a good job of building up the reasons that Moraine had to be so focused, the reasons she dedicated her entire life and sacrificed much of her life to be able to, to help the Dragon Reborn, to see him win, because she understood. She'd gotten glimpses of evil. She knew what true evil was, and she didn't want any part of it. And she wanted to spare the world from it.
Mm. Yeah. Certainly. I think that this chapter does stand out from other parts of the series in that there's violence depicted in a lot of different places. We talked about that in our episode 7, the Halloween episode, especially. But I don't think there's much on-screen violence against children.
Right.
So I think that is one thing that could, especially for a parent, make this chapter especially difficult.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, it does stand out for sure, and it was one of the few things I remembered about this book.
Right. Right.
And I mean, not one of the few things, but I guess one of the few sort of parts of the Black Aja plot that I remembered.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it was interesting to see Moraine's guilt about, we actually got to see her reflect for some time on her guilt over not being able to save Isel.
Right.
And I think it was good to finally see that. Maybe it's just because we got a moment for our characters to rest for a tiny bit after something has happened. It's just been building up and building up, and they have to keep moving on to the next thing. So she didn't really
Right.
have time to think a whole lot about holding up that guy who then got shot with arrows, or leaving the woman to be drugged and possibly raped. In our last episode we talked about.
Right.
And so here she actually has some time to deal with these ramifications. And I think it's the first time she's had to look somebody in the face that she couldn't save, and watch them, fall to their death like that. That was really
Yeah.
difficult for her. I really like that. I guess this ties us into the next chapter pretty well, into the epilogue, because
Yes.
I'll go ahead and give the summary and then explain how that ties in, I guess. I have a pretty short summary of the
All
epilogue.
right.
The palace is in mourning, and Moraine is investigating Nirion's belongings. So this is the next day. But she finds no other clues to other Black Aja sisters. We see Edain, Lan's Carnera, broken by grief from losing Isel, and we get the sense that she will not be bothering Lan anymore. There's rumors that she's going to be kind of withdrawing from the world in general. Siwan has had some resolution to her plotline as well. Lady Inez had her son in a farmhouse at least 2 miles away from Dragon Mount, certainly not on its slopes. Siwan, before this point, has not been privy to the battle that Moiraine fought yesterday. Moiraine regales her friend with the tale and about how Dyric and Lan seem to be Miriam's greatest targets. Siwan solves the puzzle for them. Lan's luck is a beacon to the Black Aja. They're looking for this type of thing. They do not know when the dragon was born. So they're hunting down and killing men and boys of different ages who may be able to channel. The women decide that Moiraine will stay out in the field searching, and Siwan will go back to the tower and use her work with the Blue Aja's spy reports to aid the dragon search. Moiraine has one more loose end to go tie up, though, before she embarks on the rest of this journey. Lan seems to have left the palace already. She asks after him and finally tracks him down. He's burning a braid of hair, which is mysterious to Moiraine at the time, that had bound him to Egane, and he's moving on from his past, ready to head back to the Blight. Moiraine confesses her mission to him and spills everything about the Black Aja and the hunt for the Dragon Reborn, and convinces him that the best way to honor his lifelong oath and fight the Shadow is to ally with her. Lan kneels with his sword out and pledges himself to her, saying, "By my mother's name, I will draw as you say draw, and sheathe as you say sheathe. By my mother's name, I will come as you say come, and go as you say go." She then sets the warder bond weave and lets it settle into him, and they can now feel each other's emotions. They can now feel their emotions. He feels her grief at the loss of Isel, and Lan tries to ease that, talking about times that he's been in command of troops who have lost their lives and how you need to just move on from it. Moping about is not going to bring those people back, and focusing on your responsibility in it is not going to do anything to bring those people back. So he tries to help her move on. And they head off to their next stop on their journey. So the next stop is Arafel. And thus ends New Spring, the entire book. We're finished with it.
This, I think, it does put a nice bow on things. I'm of the understanding that he had at first decided to write about 3 prequels, and I think so. This probably got condensed down a little bit, and that's just in my mind. I can't swear to that. It seems like I've believed that for years, but I couldn't find it in print anywhere. So I may have made that up, folks. But that's just something that sticks in my mind. It seems like I heard once when New Spring first came out. But I believe Robert Jordan realized, you got to go ahead and close this out. Can't do any more prequels. Got to get back to the main story. And this epilogue, it closed out this entire wonderful novel so nicely. I guess the one loose end that I kept thinking of is, how did they explain the deaths of the prince and Isel and all of them? Because they don't really give that.
I never thought of that. That's a huge plot hole. What?
Yeah, I mean, they talk about how everyone's in mourning, the entire kingdom's in mourning, as you would expect, because no one else was out there. As far as we know, no one else saw this, saw any of this happen. So all they would have seen, it did remark about how Lan and Moiraine are running, trying to get to the place where they think the prince is gone. Moiraine even kind of hikes her skirt up and is trying to keep up with Lan. And so all the servants see him running through the palace. Yeah. And the next thing you hear is a few hours later, okay, these are dead. Lan has no visible marks on him because Moiraine has healed him. Of course, Moiraine had no visible injuries on her. She fought with a power mostly until she used her belt knife at the end. Marianne is gone. Ryan, Arafellan is gone. And
Bukama is dead. This old Malkiri man with a knife in his chest. Other people saw that, and they got to know there's foul play somewhere.
Right, but they don't know who, where, and we don't know how they explained it. We feel like there had to have been a story. Moiraine, I'm sure, came up with something, passed it along that explained Bukama's death, the deaths of these others who were cast off the roof, the disappearance of the Aes Sedai who's in the palace. But we don't know what that was. So we're kind of left, knowing something had to be happening, but somebody had to have found these bodies and reported it. And you think no one would have been suspicious? And the last time we saw anybody on that walkway, Lan and Maureen's running there,
Yeah.
and they come back a couple hours later, and everybody else is gone. So,
Huh.
it seems like there would have had to have been a lot of suspicion on her,
Yeah.
and on Lan, but we're never given that.
I'm sure that there would be some kind of in-world explanation, but I think that that is another point that illustrates that the Black Aja plot point and these characters we're only introduced to in the last handful of chapters
Yes,
are not really the focus. They are the mechanisms and the vehicle to get this backstory of Lan and Moiraine and Suwan's
right.
search for the Dragon Reborn
I
into the
agree.
canon.
I agree because they are the main focus of the story, and like you said, trying to get this kind of backstory that I feel like is really necessary.
Hmm.
I mean, it'd be a great series if it was just the original 14 books, but this prequel, it adds so much depth to their backstory. Um, I had no idea, how close Moraine and Seoane would have been
Yeah.
without this. You never would have known it from the main body of work.
No.
Um, I always wondered about Moraine and Lan and how she came to have a Valkyrie King as a warder. Um, and it's a great story to have. And you see how these two need each other. You see how Lan needs Moraine and how Moraine needs Lan
Yeah.
throughout the entire series, even during their times of separation when it's supposed that Moraine is dead. You see how
Hmm.
much they needed each other there, but at the same time, now we have some idea why. They have this shared trauma, this shared history. He lost Bukama. She has seen Izelle die. And 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 how she convinced him, hey, don't just go throw your life away in the blind. Your fight is not just against the blind; it's against the shadow. And I can help you. I can give you direction. Of course, said before she bonded him, she explained it all to him. She told him everything she knew about the prophecies, the birth of the dragon reborn, and her mission to try to save him and prevent Termingaidan from going south, as it were. I think that he was a man who was born for that, just as she was the Aes Sedai who was born to be there and help lead Ray and find him
Hmm.
and and kind of announce him to the world in a way that would lend him political strength and be able to unite the nations together as much as he did. All of that's important, but I think Lan was born for that moment, just as Moraine was. That it couldn't have worked without those two, and I'm intrigued to see how those two came together. I think it was necessary. I think it was good. I love this story. There is that one big plot hole that I struggle with a little bit.
Hmm.
At least you know breathe a hint of what the story was you came up with.
Yeah.
But I can only trust there was something there. She thought of some. Maybe she and see one sat up there in the night and talked about it or something, and then announced some things. Just let me know that it happened. I don't have to know what it was. Just let me know there was some excuse given. But
Yeah.
um, you know, a fade, and you know, Land fought it, and Moraine burned it to ashes. There's no evidence.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
missed
Yeah.
something. Just let us know that there was something, but we didn't. So we're here to create our own ideas at this point.
Hmm. I think RJ does make use of mystery a lot, so he can leave some things without ever a clear answer, and that's one thing that has had people continue to discuss these books long after they're
Yes,
finished. Some
yes,
of the hype around some series is figuring out what's going to happen in the next book, and then maybe once the story's all wrapped up, there's not as many discussion points anymore. But I think in this series, there's definitely enough gaps that we can keep talking about it. So I
oh
think it is fun
yes.
to come up with your just kind of pet theories on what they might have said here. I was thinking at first, like, well, maybe they could have said that the father fell over, like maybe they said that two people fell over the side trying to save the boy as he was falling, or
Oh yeah,
something like that, but I couldn't come up with a way that really seems very plausible, because it just, like,
right,
why
right,
would the Isel have even been there? There wasn't something that made a lot of sense. But I
right.
didn't even think about that until you brought it up. Interestingly, because my focus was so much on Lan and Moraine's relationship and their character development, and Moraine having to kill for the first time, which we don't actually see her deal with that, but she had to stab her mistress of novices in the back, and the mistress of novices
Yes.
is a big authority figure, and also somebody whose shoulder they can cry on. So she's, she's gotten spankings from this woman before, and she's probably come to her with problems. And it's good to see how Maureen's Aes Sedai training has paid off, so that she is so quickly able to be very practical in an emergency and do what needs to be done.
Yes.
And I also like that, we got to see their Lan and Moiraine especially break down these walls. I mean, the ultimate vulnerability you can have with somebody is this bond like this. It's a deeper emotional bond than you can even get through, in this turning of the wheel, non one power related marriage ceremonies.
Right. Right.
So it's being constantly in the other person's head, and vice versa, is something that neither of them would have been ready for at the beginning of this book. And this book's events happen in a very short amount of time.
Right.
So it is just it seems very fated. Like you said, she needs to be the person to guide the Dragon Reborn. He is destined to not only have his personal war against the Shadow, but he has further development later where he's able to actually own his status as King of Malkir and have lead the Malkiri restoration.
Right.
But I think it's just so beautiful that they have finally broken down those walls and stopped being so defensive and adversarial. I think it really helped Lan that he got to move on from his from Edain, who had all this power over him in this position she has in Malkiri culture. Admittedly, he wasn't the one who was able to set those boundaries and say no and just run away from her. It had to happen through her having such a loss that she was willing to kind of pull her claws out of him. So it's interesting to think about what might have happened otherwise. Would Lan have been able to make that kind of move to let go in that way? I'm not really sure. So yeah, I think we just see things happening kind of the way that they're supposed to. Even though Rand has only just been born, I think his Tavir and pulling is already bringing the people together, bringing those ingredients who have to be at Tarmangaidon or have to get people there.
Oh, yeah. I've never looked at that way, but yes, you're very right.
Because it's so strange that they just bump into each other on the road, and then Moiraine even looks back and says, I knew from the moment I met you,
yes,
that I wanted to bond you. And she doesn't think that at the time, consciously, where the reader can see it.
right.
But I think it is under the surface that she feels some kind of affinity towards him. And I think she, just like some people are with romantic attraction, the reason she's so adversarial towards him is because she's really trying to protect herself from feeling those feelings of wanting to be vulnerable with someone.
Oh, that's perceptive. I missed that one. No, I had often looked at how he was in her mind and she was in his,
Mm-hmm.
and then she reflects back at she's approaching him here at this very last scene of the epilogue. How she said that I kind of had this in my mind to either you do this or find out he's a dark friend, because you remember she's still suspecting everybody being a dark friend. But yeah, I had not looked at it that way. Like you just said, that's intriguing.
I think it's cool. It's like a platonic marriage ceremony almost. And again, I just can't stop saying how much I enjoy that there's such an intimate and deep and meaningful relationship between a man and a woman. And we know that this is a woman who's attracted to men, maybe women as well, right? But at least attracted to men, but has no attraction for Lan. We know Lan's attracted to women, but he has no attraction for her. And so they're able to have this extremely meaningful relationship and work together, which is kind of the point of the series of, if men and women could actually understand each other, they could work together and do some of the greatest things that need to be done.
Right.
And I also think that, sort of like you were saying about seeing physical diversity in the series, and that's something you're looking forward to and thinking that we're kind of ready for. I think that seeing so many different types of relationships depicted in these series is something that a lot of people could probably see us as being very ready for as well. I could imagine asexual people being particularly interested in this warder bond, issue,
Hmm.
because you can have a meaningful, deep relationship and a lifelong, even connection with somebody, but it doesn't have to be physical and it doesn't have to be a marriage, but it's still a partnership that's you rely on that person for just about everything. And so,
Right.
I just think there's a cool way for a lot of people to kind of see themselves in this series with so many types of cultures and
Right. Right.
relationships and appearrances.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I waxed a
No.
little too poetic or
No, that's
idealistic there at
fine.
the end, but
They and Moraine and Lan have this one shared thing. Like you said, it's not a romantic love. It's not any kind of sensuality, but it's this shared bond of fighting the shadow.
hmm
They were both, you know, very firm in their belief in doing what's right. His and the notion of honor and being that Malkiri king that he was raised to be, and hers in just taking up her blue Aja cause of
hmm
just standing against the shadow, even when it's nebulous, even when you don't know who's good and bad, even when you don't know where the Dragon Reborn is, and all this seems so hopelessly out of your control. You stand there and do what you can for what's right, and that's their shared bond. I'm also intrigued by the water bond and the issue it arises. Just because I understand, I get in a lot of women's heads. And it's got to be it's, it's got to be intriguing for them.
Oh boy.
I'm sorry. Uh,
No, you're fine. It does bring up like I think we've said in earlier episodes that the water bond gets fully explored in all kinds of different iterations.
yes.
And I think we also see other magical bonds that are very similar, not just like Elaine bonding Brigitta in that emergency situation.
Yeah.
But one that's particularly interesting to me is the Aiel first sister bonding ceremony that seems
Oh,
very
yes.
similar. They end up being able to sort of be aware of each other in a much deeper way. But,
Right.
and they're bonded as a type of family. So again, it's another one of those platonic and a non-romantic types of extreme bonds. It's just cool that at the end of the day, there's a lot of the power of friendship in this series, and it doesn't come off as corny.
Right.
And
Right.
it's we can see people who seem to embody those most hyper masculine kind of stereotypes. Somebody like Lan still
Hmm.
open himself up to be able to feel so much because that actually makes him stronger. And I think that's a good message
Right.
for um, gender roles in general, I think, but also for kind of speaking to how even the most macho of men, it looks like, can really open themselves up to feeling something, and that's how you fight the shadow, literally.
Right.
I think I've rambled enough in a lot of incoherent ways for this episode. What about you? Do you have anything
uh,
else?
I've got one of the things we can throw it in the outro. I mean,
hmm
not the outro. We can throw it in the after show, or we can do it after the outro, whatever you want.
Okay. Well, I'll read us out, and then we can do some
Okay.
quick after show stuff.
So I hope all of you listeners will join us next time for episode 11, where we will finally get into the eye of the world in the one chapter where Moraine has a point of view.
You can find us on Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can also stay updated on Twitter at LajaraSadai or subscribe to our YouTube channel of the same name. Tell them bye, Giskel.
Goodbye, Giskel. I thought I would throw this out there, and hopefully you can get some Twitter feedback from some of our listeners on this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how the number 13 shows up so often in the story,
Mm-hmm.
such as the Aes Sedai can link together and they can form a circle of 12, but they cannot go beyond that until we find out through the Forsaken you have to have a man there.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's 13 and you have to have a man
Yeah,
channeler
it's
to go
13.
beyond that to another circle. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Number 13.
Sisters
Oh,
and
yes.
13 fades or Murdral to turn somebody to the shadow forcibly.
Right, right. There we go. Yeah. 13 sisters to stop a man from channeling.
Oh, yeah.
13, yeah, or 13 withdrawal to, as you said, to turn someone to the shadow. But as well, there's another one. Historically, we have the seven Ajas in the tower. But historically, when it first formed, there were 12 Ajas. Now, some of those had
Yeah.
kind of fallen away, and of course we could go through how the red Aja is the largest, and it trickles down to blue, and then I think white or
Hmm.
yellow is the smallest beyond that. The different varying numbers of women within those Ajas. But in the past, historically, it began with 12. But that's because the black Aja was unknown. The black Aja is the 13th Aja.
Wow. Huh. Interesting. I had no idea. It makes me wonder if sort of in universe, Robert Jordan is saying, "Oh, look, this is the origin of in our age, the reason why we think 13 is unlucky is because of all these associations. The Black Ajah is the
Right?
13th Ajah, or you need 13 sisters and 13 Murdral to turn somebody, and it's been an it because of the physical limit. I think that the reason 13 is significant for all the other reasons, like the having the same number of Forsaken and that type of stuff, is because of that limit on the circle. That's probably what got people in those cultures to see 13 as significant, and for Team Shadow to keep using that number for different things.
Ah, yeah, yeah. Because that was the first thing that stood out in my mind was that it took the 13 sisters to capture a man in Gentleman who was
Yeah.
channeling or to even hold a shield over him
Well, I
to
think you
match his
can.
power. But
Oh, right, right, right. I forgot about the power difference. I
yeah,
was about to say, I think you can do it with less, but 13 is just customary. But no, no, no. Yeah,
right,
I forgot the power
yeah,
difference. Yeah.
right. 'Cause, I mean, less might be able to, but he could not resist 13, and
Mm,
they couldn't link beyond 13, so they couldn't go
right.
15 because only 13 sisters can link, and they completely lost that lore on how to get beyond that.
Mm,
I of course, when Aes Sedai were both male and female back breaking and the taint on sighting, it was just common knowledge. I'm sure people didn't
mm.
even think twice. They probably did not bother to write it down that
Yeah.
to you can only have a circle of 13 female Aes Sedai. To go beyond that, you have to bring in the male Aes Sedai. So once the breaking and all of that, and male channeling was something so horrifying, and male channelers were hunted down, that was just completely lost.
Mm,
Well, a lot of things were lost in the breaking. It's because things were literally so broken. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting about the original 13. I'm putting air quotes around that. Ajas, even though officially there were only 12, but the Black Aja would make the 13th. Just as in this turning of the wheel that we're studying now, there are truly 8 Ajas, although only
mm.
7 are acknowledged.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool how the numbers that are still considered kind of sacred or profane in our turning of the wheel show up in the third age as well.
Yes,
That's pretty
yes,
cool. Again, it's one of those things that make this series seem so seamless to just walk into. It's a very established world that has just enough bridges to our own, that you can feel very immersed when you get in it.
yeah,
Um, so I wanted to touch on really quickly again the plans for next week. So the reason I wanted to, I changed it just not long before recording was because
right.
I think there are some stuff we see from other people's eyes of Moraine that I would want to cover, but we're not going to read and cover all of Eye of the World. And there's plenty of other
Right.
companion podcasts I would encourage other people to
Mhm.
listen to. I tend to shout them out on Twitter pretty regularly, so stay on the lookout for that if you do want to reread Eye of the World after this one and keep up with chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
So I think that one of my favorite things that she does that I want to cover is when she says um, that she would rather destroy them herself than to let the shadow have the boys. And
Oh, I
that's
don't
when
remember
the
that.
first time we were like, oh my gosh, wow, she is serious. Um, and I just think right on the heels of this, it would be really cool to look at all of her mysterious stuff and all of the collateral damage that goes behind them as they're traveling, because you see how focused she is on this single goal and what she's been through already so far, and
Right.
so why she's so one track minded.
Mm.
So I guess we could read just some of the summaries of. I would just probably look her up as a character on the wiki, or maybe even read some of the chapter summaries of the chapters in Eye of the World or something like that, just so we can hit the highlights of what she's done and how we see her from other people's eyes briefly, and then spend a lot of time in her point of view at the very end of the book and kind of bridge all of that together. The library.tarvalin.net.
Okay.
And they have a summary written for every chapter.
Okay, library.tarvalin.net.
And then I also go to the same wiki that you probably looked up that's like Fandom Media or something. If I just Google a character, it's the first thing that pops up. And so I would probably just look at the character page for Moiraine and see what kind of highlight events in the Eye of the World.
Okay.
They break it up by book. So
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll play with that some more because I've looked at a few things. After you said something the other day when I sent you the memes, and you said something about, do you get those off a Facebook fan page? I thought, I never thought about a Facebook fan page.
Yeah.
So I went in and I joined 2 of them.
I've got a quick message. I know you're probably about to have to go, but I just logged into Podbean since you were mentioning some stuff about it and looked at our analytics from this side of things, and it gives a breakdown of where in the world our podcast has been downloaded, which is really fascinating to me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So
yes,
we have 50, and this is just from like the past week. We have 50 downloads in the U.S., 5 in Canada, 2 in the UK, and then we got a few in some other countries. We got 1 in Bulgaria, 1 in Belize, 1 in the Netherlands, and 1 in the Philippines.
Wow!
So that's so exciting to me that we have international listeners.
We are international.
Yeah.
I like that. Oh, yeah. I like that.
So that's a fun note to leave you with.
Yeah.
I thought.
You said how many?
Well, that was over just 1 week. So there was almost 50 in the U.S. and then just a handful in Canada. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's totally 132 unique downloads total, and in the last week, 55.
Okay. Well, I just was one of those a few minutes ago, but that's cool.
That's not bad.
But I obviously got to delete off the ones I've already heard. I realized what kind of memory is taken up. But oh, that is neat. That's like I said, I've got a couple of people that friends of mine that love Wheel of Time, and I've recommended the podcast to them, but I don't know that they've listened to it yet. So.
Yeah, it doesn't show where in the U.S., so we can't see a map and guess. Be like, I bet that's them. We're not there, but
yeah. Going back and listening to these is kind of funny to me. I've picked up 1 or 2 things that we messed up on that we didn't realize at the time or whatever. Later readings, I'm like, so they covered that 2 chapters later, and I didn't.
Oh yeah, that's happened to me all throughout this book.
Well, I love you, and I'll talk to you later, sweetheart.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.